This talk on 4 reasons only 32% of development projects will succeed, or conversely, why 68 won't, was actually a report based that we had at Empire Research Group do for us. And the reason we did this is that we've been working in the software development field. Well, NetObjectives is 13 years old, and we've been doing kind of agile methods for the last 10 or so. And I'm imagining we actually have a mixed audience. This is really not an agile talk, but I imagine that there are people out in the audience that have some agile experience and some that don't. So before I start, I want to talk a couple minutes about this, because depending upon where you are, you might actually want to listen to this talk a little bit different. I think it's true in both cases. I think the success rate of agile projects is actually considerably higher than this, but there are things in agile methods that still don't address the issues that are brought up here, and that's why I think this is a very important webinar. And the reason we commissioned this study is we've done a lot of work with IT and actually also product groups. So if you're a product group and you hear me refer to things like IT, just imagine that in IT you're building software that actually helps internal people in your company provide services to other people. Well, products are kind of the same thing, except they're external. They're still software that's helping other people get their job done. So I believe the issues are still pretty much the same. But over the years, we've seen a lot of pain and frustration caused by failed projects, even when they followed best practices. So we had our ideas about it, and we wanted to, though, have an independent research company go and look at this as well. And in kind of a nutshell, one of the things we're going to be seeing is that we don't always take an holistic approach. This is one of the things we've noticed in our work, working with clients who kind of worked with other people. So let me give about a 2 or 3 minute background before we start this, since I feel there are probably, like I say, 2 different audiences here, and I want both of you to feel very comfortable. So if you're not an Agile, if you're not familiar with Agile, basically there's a lot of stuff about Agile that's been said that we agree with, and a lot we don't agree with. But in a nutshell, we like to think of Agile as about delivering business value quickly. It doesn't mean frequently. They're 2 different things. You could plan a year, and a year later have something delivered, and then a month after that have something else delivered that's been in development for you. That's not quickly, that's frequently. In other words, quickly means I get an idea, I get it out the door in like a month or 2 months or 3 months. So Agile is about how does the business respond quickly and get value out the door quickly. And if you haven't done Agile, it's something I suggest doing. We actually do what we call Lean Agile, because that also comes from the business side in this notion of speed. Now, if you are doing Agile, you probably had some fairly good success with it, or we often see a lot of people start with success at Agile and then kind of stagnate. I'm going to suggest that you look to see what the study says you're doing well, and look to see what the study says you need to go taking it to the next level. Our experience is many Agile projects, the overwhelming majority of them, in our opinion, when it comes to organizations over 150 in the development group, spend way too much time looking at the development team, which is very important, but don't at all attend to or don't focus enough on the business side, or what's the role of mid-management, or how do you coordinate things. So depending on either camp you're in, if you're not doing Agile, you might look to see how can we deliver quickly to be an advantage. And if you are doing Agile, you might ask yourself, how could we extend our reach? And how does this study relate to both? Because I think it actually does. And I'll try to make those comments as I go, and feel free to ask questions as you go that I'll address at the end. So that's why we did this. We wanted to say, well, we've seen this, but is it really true, or is it just kind of our bias? And actually, I'll admit, I think what they came up with was pretty much what we were thinking. So the question is, we're going to cover why do projects fail and why are they challenged, and how do we select projects that deliver the greatest value and results? And really, is there such a thing as 100% success rate? And I can tell you right now, not really. In fact, I'm not even sure you want one, and we'll talk about that a little bit. There's certain times you have to push the envelope, and that means you're not going to always succeed. But the question is, how do you know you're not succeeding quickly? So let's look at some trends over time. Let's get some data here. And, when initiating a project, let's look at, first of all, what's the goal? What's considered acceptable? It's sometimes considered, well, we want 100%, successful delivery or quick discovery, that we need to abandon the project. In other words, it's not so much that we always want to succeed, but if we're not going to succeed, we really should find out that we're not going to succeed quickly. What we we don't want is a project that goes into kind of a death march where we just keep trying to get it out, and it is either really, really late in coming out, or maybe never ends. You know, that's actually the worst thing that can happen to a project, is not be late, but in a sense never end. I've seen projects where, like, a vice president or some high-level director is responsible for it, and after it gets delayed long enough, this thing is not going to be canceled. It's either going to succeed, it's either going to come to completion, or somebody's going to get fired. So we want to cut it before that happens. So we recognize that we're not going to succeed all the time, but when we don't succeed, we want to at least be able to discover that we're not going to succeed quickly. We want to discover that quickly, and there's some questions on how we might do that. So the ideal might be 100%, but we're going to recognize, okay, well, that's not really going to happen, but you know, if we look at where we are, we're so far from that, we're not really, like, we don't have to worry about what percent might fail quickly, you know. So in 94, we had 16% that were considered successful. And in 15 years later, it's doubled, but that's still a far cry from where we are. And failed to meet the objectives. Now, the question here is actually an interesting one. What does it mean, failed to meet the objectives? And it's kind of ironic, or I don't know, irony is the right word, but it's kind of interesting anyway, that what does meeting the objectives mean is something that's perhaps not actually a totally agreed on concept. You know, some people would say meeting objectives means I've met my budget, I've met my time, and I've met my initial requirements, and I've done up my scope, and I've done that all in the time frame, and I've said. And some people would say, well, it's really difficult to understand that at the front. Is it really meeting your objectives, or is it adding business value? And the fact that there isn't a agreement, in a sense, throughout the IT organization, which is really the driving force, and actually we think business value, adding business value is really much more important in our mind than specifically meeting the particular objective that was set out at the beginning. Did you meet the objective's intent, in a sense? What are we really trying to accomplish? But no matter how you measure it, I think we would agree when we look at the data that we really didn't get where we wanted to most of the time. So the question is, why are we not getting what we want most of the time, and how do we get there? I think those are valid questions and are an interesting discussion. So in 2009, the benchmark projected were 32% achieved their objectives, 44% were challenged, and 24% failed. They were either canceled or they were delivered but not used. And these are really not very good numbers. So why does this happen is really the question. You know, the cost of it is quite high. Poorly defined applications, rework costs, abandoned systems are estimated to cost more than $106 billion. So we're losing a lot of money, and a lot of it is because we're not attending to a variety of things. And the question is, what are these things? What could improve? Okay? So, you know, there's a lot of overtime, a lot of over budget, a lot less functionality. So we have a problem, I guess. So who's blamed for the failure? Well, actually, usually the programming team is blamed for the failure. And my opinion is they're blamed for it because they had it last. That's a simple logic. Well, hey, we're late. Well, who has it? The programming team. Oh, well, it's their fault. And they're really first to get blamed, but the reality is, and if you look at it, challenge and failed projects are really the development team is only responsible for failure 26% of the time. You say, well, wait a moment, if they're building it, why? How can they be responsible only that percentage of the time? Well, there are a variety of reasons for this. Some of which is that they just may be building the wrong thing. You know, they may be overwhelmed, or they can't possibly build the right thing. They may actually have it where they can't get the information they need. So, you know, when we point to IT as the blame, it causes problems, because if people aren't really there to blame, you have fallout from this. In fact, CIOs have a very high annual turnover rate. Now, this